Bam, what up, Yang Gang? Welcome back to the Trickle Up. And we got a special guest tonight. Of course, it's me and Mia as usual. And we have Rio Publican on Twitter, shortly otherwise known as Rio.
Hey, nice to see you guys.
And Rio's from the Moving Forward podcast. He's been doing it for quite a while. And we want to bring more diversity of thought. And Rio's the Republican. He's a conservative background, lifelong, I believe, right?
Yeah, conservative, not necessarily Republican. You know.
Okay.
I was never Trump.
Oh yeah, I definitely know that about you. But yeah, go ahead and tell everybody about your podcast, what you talk about over there typically.
Yeah, sure. Well, it started as a Yang Gang podcast during the Democratic primary. My progressive co-host, Corey Cottrell, and I decided to just have a conversation about how both sides of the aisle and all other sides of the aisle could support the same guy. Since Yang dropped out, we've moved on to other topics. We also have now a cycle of recurring co-hosts. So Corey's one of them. But most of our co-hosts are significantly to my left because that way we get balance on our show. As the anchoring host at this point, I have a lot of power to kind of control the narrative. So I like to make sure to keep it pretty balanced. Although I do occasionally have another conservative on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, sometimes we can't find a lot of differing opinions either. So we're always looking for more pushback, if you will, and to bring up both sides of the coin, because that's just really what the mainstream media, corporately sponsored media does not give you, is both sides of the story.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of grassroots stuff doesn't really do that very well either, does it?
But yeah, so what do you got on the low for us tonight, Leah?
Tonight we're going to be talking about the Novavax application for FDA emergency use authorization. Vaccine manufacturer Novavax plans to apply for Food and Drug Administration emergency use authorization in the third quarter. It will also apply for use with the UK Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency and the European Medicines Agency. And the announcement came as part of its first quarter earnings report. They expect to produce 100 million doses per month by the end of the third quarter, but previously they were aiming for 150 million doses per month. So this is backtracking on expectations.
Yeah, it sounds like the classic overpromise and underperform, the Elon Musk style of promises, you know. What do you think about this, Rio?
Well, more options is obviously good. I think if it's true that it's more of a traditional vaccine, that's impressive, because part of the reason they were able to develop a vaccine so quickly is because mRNA is a new technology that made it possible to develop it faster. So that's great. That's a sign that the world working together to solve a common problem like a pandemic is possible. We need to do that with other existential threats like climate change. So I'm happy to see that happening. I will say about the problem in India. Sorry, guys, as someone on the right, I'm always paying attention, and being part of Democratic politics is kind of new to me. So seeing like the far left of the party, the kind of the Bernie wing of the Democratic Party, going after Biden because, oh, we're hoarding the vaccines and we're not giving to the poor people in India. From what I understand, that isn't true. The Biden administration has been offering aid to India, and a lot of vaccines are actually made there. It's a highly populated country, and it's a really, really hard logistical, just difficult thing to get that many vaccines to that many people. We finally vaccinated about a third of the United States has had at least one dose of the vaccine now. So imagine a country with even more people in it and with fewer resources than the US. You know, that's the real struggle. But of course, Biden isn't hoarding the vaccines and preventing them from getting it. They're helping them because Biden is a smart guy, and he knows that if this disease spreads around in other parts of the world, it's going to come crashing back down on our shores in no time with all kinds of new variants and so forth that our current vaccines might not be as effective against. So it's in our interest to help everybody around the world.
Yeah, and that's another thing is, too, I don't think people really realize they have 1.3 billion people.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
We have 331 million, according to our new census from 2020. So that is 1/4, guys. That is, there's 4 United States populations in India.
And we're still struggling to vaccinate all of our people. So just imagine.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like you said, it is being made over in that area. So
Yes.
why ship it to us so we can give it back to you? That's just stupid.
Okay. On the note of the left, and their complaints, it is interesting to note that is indeed a very slim number, though, that do have that complaint. Even on the Bernie side, the numbers heavily favor Biden's approval with the pandemic and all that, and his handling of it. Something like 90 Democratic, 64% independent. So, like, the majority of people do see that efforts are being made, particularly with the pandemic. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfectly valid point. I try to put things in perspective and remember that Twitter isn't real life. On Twitter, you would think that 50% of Democrats are communists, but we know it's more like 0.05%. So, take it for what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is what we're up against with this onslaught of algorithmic, rabbit holing of us all and put us in these echo chambers. Oh yeah, let's also bring up something in the chat here. There are some people in commenting here about how China is stepping up to help provide vaccines for India because that's their border.
Sure.
So they're trying to protect their own interests as well. And China has like a little over 1.3 billion people. I think it's 1.4 billion people in China. So
yeah. They're a little richer too, so they can afford to help, which is good.
Yes, and they have the labs and stuff there the infrastructure, I guess you'd say there, considering they had the Wuhan virus cough happen there. I still think it was a mistake in a lab. Personally, I don't have no data to back that up, but I think that it's very possible they were jacking around with it just like we were. Anthony Fauci supports this. He supported us gamifying viruses to work on our techniques and stuff like that. So I have no doubts that we were doing the same thing China just made a mistake, as far as gamifying it.
It's certainly possible. I don't think it's a crazy conspiracy theory, but like you said, there's no hard evidence for it yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, the epidemiologists I've listened to and read have said that that's a definite possibility. One of the mistakes that the Trump administration made was they backed out of our oversight of China as part of our pandemic response task force that began under the George W. Bush administration that Obama ratcheted up. And the Trump administration defended it by saying, well, we kind of, just moved it to a different branch and that sort of thing. But they really shut it down and stuck it under another branch. It would be like if you shut down the police department and then move the personnel to the fire department, is a way of thinking about it. And so clearly that must have undermined our ability to keep an eye on what was going on in China, specifically with as related to pandemics and so forth. So I think that it's possible that if he hadn't made that bad decision, which I think was probably motivated more by personal animosity toward Obama than what was good for the country, we might have known about it sooner, and we might know more about it than we will ever know.
And we'd have more infrastructure ready to handle it. Throughout the whole playbook,
Yeah.
The Obama administration got lucky when SARS just disappeared. It just kind of fluttered and it died out. And
that might have happened with this if we had known sooner. I mean, the thing about the Chinese Communist Party is they don't tend to agree to allow outsiders to keep an eye on what they're doing, right? So the fact that we had negotiated that with them is not something that we should have just willy-nilly taken for granted.
It's hard to earn that.
It could very well be that there were no other liberal democracies that had such an arrangement, and so we could have messed it up for the whole planet.
You got anything you want to throw in here, Mia, on top of that?
Oh, I'm just overwhelmed by the big picture there. I could go back to what you were saying about it being in the lab and just throw my opinion that I don't have an opinion on that. I am not even going to begin to conjecture on things that I don't know. I will say, on the other hand, we do have some environmental pressures on viruses to behave in new ways with our behaviors ourselves.
Yes.
We have really tamed them down to the point that they can't really survive in us. So in order for something to be able to affect us, it would have to be particularly aggressive in the first place.
high chance of mutation to survive in our bodies with all this garbage we use in our bodies to fight off death, but
We
yeah,
put the pressure on.
What's that?
We put the pressure on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's why I always said this is my opinion. I have no data to back it up. It's just my opinion means that from what I've heard or what I've seen or what I've talked to so far.
Yeah, I know. I think you guys have both been very responsible about making sure. Yeah, put all those caveats in there.
Yeah. Caveat sandwich right here, buddy. Yeah. But yeah, guys, let us know what you think about this in the comment section. What do you think? Do you think Biden's doing a bad job by hoarding it, as some people have labeled him as, or you think it's a good idea to be responsible and tell India, we'll buy the doses from you, but keep them there? That's what they need us to do. We're going to buy the doses, we'll help them, and just don't ship them, give them out. And if the supply chain goes down because of COVID, we're in trouble again. So that's part of the whole thing. It's a World Health Organization here. We need to act like a unit, a human species, not just a bordered up these man-made borders that makes us in the tribes.
And something that's important to remind my fellow conservatives out there is that foreign aid in normal times, and even during emergencies like this of the United States, has always been a very small percentage of our GDP. It's a very large dollar amount because we're a very wealthy country with a very high GDP. So, 0.5% of our GDP means we might still be giving more total dollars than any other country in the world. When you can afford to be that generous and, it's just like pocket change for you, especially when it benefits you, as this does, because otherwise it becomes a problem for us. It's just like neoconservatives like myself like to remind people about foreign policy. You can't just put your head in the sand like isolationists like Donald Trump want us to do. You have to be aware of what's going on in the world, and sometimes you have to put your finger on the scale, because if you don't, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass.
Clearly. We are experiencing that bitten ass syndrome. Yeah, that's a good way to wrap it up too, because that's what we've kind of put the blinders on, been looking down and like focus on here. Meanwhile, there's this thing coming at us. It's impending. It was obviously pending. Preventative medicine is the most efficient, cost-effective medicine. So the vaccine makes sense. Shutdowns make sense. A year ago would have made sense and been more effective.
Yeah, that's true. If we had done them sooner and faster and more across the board, we might not have had to do them for as long, which would have actually probably resulted in the economy sustaining less damage as a consequence of that.
Yeah,
which,
absolutely.
Again, an actual right-winger should care about.
Yeah. And so now we got an impending doom of a housing crisis, and we got a homelessness crisis, and a future crisis of maybe long-term health consequences of COVID, where we don't know what the long-term health outcomes can be. We could have this whole generation that's going to be disabled permanently because of lung and heart damage.
It's possible. I'm pretty sure I had it fairly early on, so I'm a little worried about that. Yeah, I was actually visiting my mom in La Jolla, which is a beach suburb of San Diego, when the breakout happened. And San Diego was one of the first places hit. So at that exact moment, I came down. I was the sickest I've been since I was a kid. Was in bed for 2 weeks. So it's entirely possible that I caught it really early on. It was so early that the doctors, they didn't know what to tell me. They just said, stay home. And so I extended my visit to my mom's until I was recovered, and then I returned home to beautiful Northern California, where I am now.
Well, I'll keep on knocking on wood. I'm a healthcare provider, and I've never gotten it. I've been super cautious, and boy, oh boy, in my
defense, I didn't know there was anything to catch, because by the time I caught it, it was, by the time it hit the news, I already had it.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things. They didn't have any testing yet. There's no telling. Well, it's not the flu, but it's something like the flu, and just go home, sleep it off.
Yeah, and I was never diagnosed, but I am worried about the long-term side effects. My doctor told me I just recently got the second dose of the Moderna vaccine, that people who did have it there's some preliminary evidence that if you get vaccinated, it can reduce the side effects of having caught it in the first place, the long-term side effects, hopefully. So we'll see.
Yeah, we're all going to be waiting for those studies to come out when we get a year past, all that stuff. I'll be waiting for that. Definitely doing a deep dive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll actually be talking about a interesting development regarding COVID long-term side effects a little bit later on today.
Yes, that's our next clip. We talking about a new problem. But yeah, let us know what you guys think about that in the comment section. While you're here, of course, get a video like, hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, yada, yada, yada. Go check out Rio at Moving Forward Podcast, of course, at Rio Publican. His links will be in the description box. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you guys next time. And like always, gang, gang.